Every one of us live inside of a story, not the story that you would find in a book, but the one that runs silently in our mind. You know what story I'm talking about? The narrative that we create about who we are and what the world is, where we fit in it. These stories shape our choices, our relationships, our sense of worth. But the question is, are we the authors of the stories, or are we just characters trapped inside the stories? You see, people are storytelling creatures. We don't just live life and experience life. We explain it to ourselves in our minds with a narrative. If something bad happens, we decide we're unlucky. If someone betrays us, we conclude, I can't trust anyone. If we succeed, of course, suddenly we think we're destined for greatness, right? This is the ongoing story of our life that we tell ourselves inside of our mind. The stories give meaning, right? They're like shortcuts for understanding the world. But the problem is they can also trap us. If the story you tell yourself is, I'm not good enough, you'll start seeing evidence everywhere that confirms it. If your story is that you will always bounce back, you'll look at the same challenges and see resilience instead of defeat. So, in many ways, your story becomes your lens. You may have heard people say they manifest the things that happens in their life. If your story that you tell yourself is that you always lose, you always will. You always will. Our stories are like art that is in our mind, but it eventually imitates life. But not all the stories that we have are actually ours. Many of them are passed down or inherited from family, culture, politics, religion. Maybe you were told growing up that, hey, this is what success looks like. Or people like us don't do things like that. And these become sort of these invisible scripts that run in the background of our mind, shaping how we see ourselves without even realizing it. Think about how much of your life is truly yours and how much of it is a story that someone else handed to you. I'm very guilty of that myself. The good news, such as is the case with me as well, is stories can be rewritten. The story you told yourself at 15 doesn't have to be the story that you live at 40. And it rarely is, honestly. The story you inherited from your parents doesn't have to dictate your future, right? Rewriting begins with awareness and just asking yourself, what's the story that I tell myself about money, about love, about caring, about my worth? What is true? What is true? When you catch yourself limiting a story, you have a choice. You can either keep playing the same role or you can start writing a new chapter, right? The most powerful shift happens when you stop just being the main character and you step into being the author of your story. That's when you sort of blossom, I believe. And then you have life throwing all of these plot twists at you. You know, we call them the ups and downs of life, but they're really just like all these plot twists in a story, right? And you can't control it. You can't control any event, every event. You can't control the meaning you give it either. Pain, tragedy, growth, failure can be written as humiliation or as preparation for the next chapter. So you have to ask yourself, what story am I living right now? What story am I living right now? And more importantly, if I am the author of my life, what do I want the next chapter to read? Because you are the author of your life. And you always have been. You just didn't realize it at times. The pen has always been in your hands. And I think at some point we realize, all of us, I think at some point, that we are the authors of our life. I think we all realize that we have this story going on in our head. Maybe we don't call it that. Maybe we call it something else. Maybe you call it intuition, or, I don't know what you might call it, but it's your life story, and it's running in your head at all times. My life story right now, the next chapter of my life story, is working really hard to soak up as much knowledge as I can about as many things as I can and pass that to my children and grandchildren. I think it's important for them to see me at my age with the thirst to learn. And I've always had that. But now I have it even more. I have more time to focus on it as well. That's the big driver. I have more time now than I've ever had. And so I spend an enormous amount of time just absorbing information, just soaking up things I'm fascinated in, going down some subject will trip my brain and I'll spend hours going down rabbit holes trying to learn everything I can about it. That's who I am. But no, you have to write the next chapter of your story. If you don't, somebody's going to write it for you. Yeah. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Hope you guys are having a great Labor Day weekend. Really appreciate all my new followers and subscribers. Thanks.